Burnin with G, episode 17. Welcome back. I hope you guys are all doing great. This week I have my best friend Mylon Kemp on the show, and we talk everything about masturbation, sexuality, and our 1 month No Fap challenge that we just accomplished. It was the biggest accomplishment of my life, and I'm so excited to share this conversation with you. Hope you enjoy. Yo, pass the mic over this way. I'm about to be late.
Become aware of one thing. You have everything, but you don't have yourself.
Welcome back to your 12th favorite podcast, Burnin with G.
So I didn't have Instagram for a year or two, and I downloaded it again mainly for this podcast. And now I wake up in the morning, there's an itch in me. It's just like, oh, you haven't used Instagram in the morning. Let's see, maybe there will be somebody that liked your stuff. Maybe there'll be someone who follows you. It's like that little...
like an instant anxiety.
Yeah, and anytime I'm bored, anytime I'm in that just place of where my mind wants to like be free, I'm like, why? I don't want to be there. I consider that boring. And then boom, I hop on Instagram or I hop on my phone and I get that quick rush. And I feel like that is what masturbation has also become for me from such a young age. You know, right before I'm about to sleep. Do you want to just be tired for a little bit, you know, before you're just about to knock out and be in that stage for a little bit and then fall asleep? Or do you want to just masturbate, be so tired that you just knock out instantly? And I always pick that, you know, to the point where it became such a habit that I didn't know how to sleep without it for so many years.
Wow.
And I feel like that those type of things are just something that a lot of men, and none of us are alone in this, you know, there's 3.5 billion men on this planet, and I'm sure many people have masturbation issues. And I feel like it's such a weirdly taboo topic, even though everyone partakes in it, you know. And I feel like it is very important to get to a place where all men can masturbate in a healthy way, you know, figure out what that even means, to be honest.
And women too.
Yeah, and women for sure. So one thing I wanted to talk to you about is, so a few of my friends now reached out to me and were like, hey, I actually also want your help to stop masturbating now, and that meant a lot to me. So the first thing I want to talk about is, it was crazy to me about how many years I had gone without being able to successfully accomplish this. But the second I had a friend do it with me, it became like the easiest thing in the world.
Right.
You know, and I know you're all about the brains and psych. I want to understand, like, what exactly made it so much easier when I had that little bit of peer pressure, a little bit of, like, you know, the partnership that I had with you to accomplish it. What made it so different?
Well, I'm definitely no expert on the brain, so I don't have any type of exact answer about what is happening in relation to neuroscience, but I can just surmise from my own opinion. I think that there are a lot of factors at play. I think something that's really big at play is like our need to appease the group, you know, to like fit in, to like want to be viewed as someone who is worthy or has high value within the group, you know. And I think it also applies for other individuals. Like, we want others to view us in as high light as possible, you know. And like, we want to be this person, right? Like, you want to be this person who can, you know, go without masturbating or whatever goal you want to achieve. But we know deep down that, like, we know who we are and we know how much we fuck up, and we know that at the end of the day, we're not this like amazing person that we project ourselves to be. And I think for us, it's very important that that image is maintained. It's kind of this social identity that we operate through. And I think that social identity is so fucking important that we will go to very far extents to maintain that social identity. You want to be someone who is viewed as, you know, maybe strong, maybe willful, you know, whatever it is. If you have an identity of like not giving a fuck and you don't care around people, I doubt you would have any type of effect. True. If someone was like, hey, you know, let me keep you accountable. You don't care. That's already how you build yourself. But there's a certain type of identity drives behavior at the end of the day. And I think that having your identity be someone who is, you know, really trying to have self-discipline, someone who's really trying to be focused, someone who's really trying to grow, that is in alignment with that habit. And so when you tell someone else about that, it now becomes real. It becomes this. It doesn't just become this thought, maybe. It becomes this real thing in reality. Words speak things into reality. And now you're not only considering how is it that, what happens when I fuck up, but it's how is the view that this person has of me going to be fucked up when this operates. And that also really affects your own view of yourself. You know, there's this theory I heard called like the looking glass theory of self, which says that I am not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am.
Yeah.
And so not only that, but now it's going to affect how I view myself, because it's thinking about how is it that I view what you view of me.
Okay.
And now I'm going to think, oh, this person maybe lost respect for me, which is maybe going to make me even lose respect for myself. And the brain always wants to prioritize self-esteem. You know, that's another thing that's so fucking important. So I think there's a lot of factors at play, but I think at the end of the day, having an accountability partner really puts us in that position where we want to maintain that high identity of ourselves, that high esteem, and it will be the thing that will drive you to your goals. And you know, even something not as deep as that is like, you know, if it's your homie, like you just don't want to let them down. You know, like you know somebody's doing something with you, like you really want to hold true to it.
Yeah, and I think like what you brought up there is super important, because oftentimes they can really ask you like, why am I even trying to do this? You know, and that is something I question about almost everything that I do. It's like, why do I really care to either accomplish this or go through with this? And with this masturbation thing, exactly like what you said, like when I posted on my social media, when I told people about it, it became so much more real than when I just told myself, hey, I want to be this person. Now I'm like, okay, all these other people are going to think that I'm going to be this person. Exactly. So let me use the fact that my brain, you know, reacts to this in a much more positive way to help that channel grow, or help that channel to the person that I want to be one day. You know, and I feel like that you know, being able to do this with you was really helpful. Another thing I wanted to ask you more in specific with the actual act itself. So you've done it for how many months now? Maybe like, would you say maybe like 5-6 months? Over
like
from the start?
Doing the No Fap February? I'd say maybe about 5-6 years probably.
Wow, nice.
I would say, yeah.
So what are some things that you've like noticed and learned along the way? You know, what are some of the things that, and I think this is a question that most people would be interested in knowing, like and I'll like to share after you, like what are some of the differences you've noticed as you stopped?
Yeah. So man, it's so hard to even recall back on the first time this happened, but I remember the first time that I did this, it kind of changed everything, because it was the first step in me really taking control of my will, you know, really taking control of some aspect of my life that I truly thought was uncontrollable. And, you know, I think it's very common in, you know, society for masturbating every day to be the norm. You know, you know, you tell someone you masturbate every day, oh, okay, you know, like who doesn't? And so to go against the norm in that way, and in a way that is so positive, you know, it's not something that's really pushed in culture, and I think a lot of that is because of how much, you know, money companies make off of pretty much commercializing sex and, you know, doing that. It's not something that's pushed in culture, right?
Big facts.
And so I think one of the things that I first noticed was how much less of a sex drive I had, and it sounds negative at first, but I think what happened was simply that I didn't feel like this uncontrollable animal that like had to like please himself, where I was gonna like, you know, fucking die. Like before, I feel like I would wake up sometimes, or, you know, go throughout a day, and I would be like so uncontrollably horny that I would like message someone and kind of just pretty much use them as like a means for me to have sexual pleasure, and then like ignore them after. And I think this is a really common behavior, especially men. And for me, I noticed that I kind of stopped doing that after. I didn't feel the need to. I stopped viewing women as like, oh, this like means that like gratifies me sexually. And I started viewing them more as a person, and it opened up a space for me less to have to act on that urge. Like I was able to choose my own reasoning instead of my feelings in that moment. I was able to shift from a state of mind and a way of being that was very feelings based, and shifted more towards a way of being that was more reason based.
Right.
And that was something that was really huge, that I definitely got out of it, and I think that I still carry even to this day. Like I'm just way less overrun by my sexual urges than I used to be, like completely. It's actually pretty crazy. I think something else that I got out of it was it became momentum for all of my other self-discipline based habits. Like if I wouldn't have been able to accomplish that, I don't think all these other things would have came out of it. And for me, it just built this momentum towards, okay, now what other area of my life can I tackle that maybe I haven't really exhibited that much will in? You know, maybe I could do it in like my diet. Maybe I can do it in, you know, working out. Maybe I could do it in whatever. Like that is such a difficult thing for people, that once you can knock that out of the way, it just fucking expands what you think is possible for you to accomplish in the future. And it's like, once you can just knock these things out of the way, your identity, speaking of identity earlier, gets built around being someone who is, I can do whatever I put my mind to. And the implications of that are fucking amazing.
And, yeah.
Like, that is one of the most powerful mindsets I think someone can develop. Through doing accomplishing tasks that you did that were very hard for you, that really require your will and really require you to push through some very, very strong urges. You know?
And I actually, on that topic, I want to bring up something that you had actually told me, yesterday or something that I think is super important, super cool. And that's when you accomplish goals that you set, your mind, produces these things that make you want to accomplish more things.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, if you set a goal and you just keep failing to reach that goal, then your brain tells you that you can't accomplish it.
Exactly.
So something I think that was really important for me in terms of masturbation is I had always set a goal that I literally was just too far. Like I can't just jump to being an NBA player. You got to high school, college. You got to work your way up. And I think that's super true with masturbation. Like if you need to set 3 days, start there. If you need to set 3, 5, 7, keep going like that up to reach to a month, and that's like the way you build it up, then that's what you need to do.
Absolutely.
And I feel like being able to just go a straight month, so much was helped because I was able to live here and things. But I understand that if I was at home and I had just jumped straight to I need to hit this in 1 month, it would have been way harder to have been able to do that.
Absolutely.
So can you just go back on that topic that you were telling me about how that works exactly, like in terms of accomplishing the goals that you actually set for you?
Yeah, so there is, I don't know how new it is now, and I know when I was looking into it, it was rather new, but there's pretty much, we're learning that the way dopamine works, and it works in a really complex way, but one of the ways in which it works is the more things you accomplish, the more dopamine receptors you will actually develop, and the more your brain will actually put you in a state that is more motivated towards accomplishing more goals, because dopamine is the neurotransmitter in the brain that's associated with reward and motivation. And so the more you build those receptors by accomplishing goals, the more likely you are to now accomplish a goal in the future. And the thing is, it works both ways though. So every time you set a goal for yourself and you don't accomplish it, you actually kill off some of those receptors. And that's why when it comes to a goal, it's very important to not set a goal that's extravagant, and I see the motivation behind that. You really want to view yourself as a big person. You want to believe that you can do it, and I think there has to just be a balance to that. You can really view yourself as a big person within realistic parameters, and within that you can just set goals for yourself that are realistic, and when you accomplish them, the more you do that, then you can set those really big goals for yourself. You really build that confidence, you really build that leeway, and that is so important in masturbation too. You have to, I think, for some people, if you've been doing it every day for I don't know how many months, years, maybe just start with a week, and then maybe do 2 weeks, and then build up. If you feel like you can, if you're not that controlled by it, I want to say, then maybe you can go for a month. And I think what's really important too in the process is being forgiving of yourself, and not operating off of this mentality that's I set a week and I masturbated within 4 days, so fuck it, I'm just gonna give up. Don't fall within that fallacy of you have to hit everything perfectly, they're as if the length of it and your consistency and keeping the length is necessarily that big of a deal. I think you can look at something more within frequency than duration, right? You can be hey, I set this goal for myself, I fucked up, but I'm just gonna keep on going anyways, and then next time I will try even better, even harder. But so many people just fuck up and they're okay, I'm out. And I see how that works in relation to the dopamine thing that I just mentioned. But you have to override that and tell yourself that just because you messed up doesn't mean that you are messed up, and it doesn't mean that you can't do it in the future. It's a lot of believing in yourself. Yeah,
and that's super big. I think that's something that should be reiterated over and over and over again. Just because you fail at something does not mean you're a failure. Yeah. It just means you failed at that one thing.
Exactly.
And I hear you saying that. I hear everyone saying it. The way they speak about themselves. When people make mistakes, they're fuck, I'm stupid. Yep. I just made a mistake. I'm not stupid. And I feel if you can just change the way your brain speaks, just that sentence to yourself, failure will become so much more of a challenge than an actual end all be all. And we went surfing today, and I had that same thing. I literally could not get it, and I started blaming myself instead of just hey, this is just one thing I'm failing to get.
Right.
So one thing I think that is super important that you should also adopt with that mindset is being able to critically think, okay, what exactly did I mess up on? Mm-hmm. And then how can I actually improve from there? So one of the guys I was talking to today actually gave me that input. He was why don't we all just take notes on what are the moments and situations that actually put us in this mindset of wanting to masturbate? then not only are you like, you're actually going about it in a scientific way where you're like, okay, let me figure out what are the situations that are inducing this mindset and what can I do to either minimize those situations from happening or why are those situations actually leading to this, you know? And I feel like, so with adopting what you were talking about earlier, that mindset of like understanding that you're just making a mistake, the next part is actually understanding how to learn from mistakes, you know, because if you're just making the same mistake over and over and over again, but you're never actually learning from it, you're not, you know, there's no point of making mistakes at that point. And I think that is something that's super important. So, you know, bouncing off that, what would you say some of the environments or situations that you get placed in where you feel more tempted to masturbate?
Yeah, and you know, I think what you're saying is like huge, and I think that's like one of the most important things in this situation is like, you know, you gotta be a little scientist about it. You know, you have to run your experiment, and if there are mishaps or things mess up, like you just reassess. Okay, what went wrong, right? And so for me, I've learned over the years, one thing is having an accountability partner is so huge. Another thing is like the brain is funny, right? And when you're in those states that it's really difficult to do something, and your body's just fiending for that dopamine hit, it's just fiending to feel good. It will like literally start to like alter your thoughts and like reality around you to some extent. And you would start convincing yourself of things that you did not believe before. So one thing that I'm very big on is having that strong reason, that anchor. That is the thing that you will be able to refer to every single time you feel like you're drifting off, that reason. And that reason has to be powerful. It has to be something that really drives you in wanting to do it. It can't just be like, oh, you know, I'm just doing it just to do it. Like, yo, like, this could mean that, you know, and I think people want to minimize it, but I don't see any reason to do that. Like, hey, maybe by me not masturbating one day, it'll lead me to being the entrepreneur that I want to be because I have more self-control, which could lead me down this gigantic path that leads to so many things that are beneficial for me. Maybe by me not masturbating, I will be able to love my partner more. You know, maybe by me not masturbating, I will be able to like respect women more, you know, whatever it is. And I think that's more associated with pornography more than necessarily masturbation, but the two are very much in sync. So I think having like a very, very strong reason, like for me, it was like, I want to actually prove to myself that like I have free will. Like I need to know that I'm not just like this robot, you know, I need to know that I'm not just this unconscious being moving through reality. And for me, that is like one of the biggest endeavors you can go on in your life.
Definitely. And you told me this right when we started, July 14th, and I wrote this right around my little chart. I said, is a person who can control his sexual urges the type of person I want to be? I put yes in capital. Because you told me like, the reason it never had, you know, I never was motivated to actually do it is because when I would be horny, the pleasure or like the outcome that I'd get from masturbation always outweighed whatever my big purpose of not masturbating was, you know? And now, you know, writing this, I'm like, not only do I want to not masturbate just because I want to prove, like, it's like, I want to be that person who is able to do that. And like what you said earlier, like, once you can accomplish that, then your mind just tells you that you can accomplish things. And I wanted that mindset. I wanted to believe in myself. And that motivation was enough to like, you know, push me over the top and be like, okay, just because, you know, I saw this person on Instagram or something, that's not enough anymore. You know, it's like this will to be this new person is so much stronger than
Absolutely. And like you said earlier, like identity drives behavior, right? Like, do you want to be the type of person who is defined by this thing, who is able to do this? And, you know, your reasons have to be bigger than your feelings, always. And like, the stronger your sexual urges are, the stronger your reasons have to be, you know? Like, it really has to outweigh it pretty heavily. And so I think that's really important. Something else that I feel like I've learned in this process is in relation to like convincing yourself of things. I think something I've caught myself doing, convincing myself, is one, I can hang out with romantic partners and have, you know, sexual partners, maybe not romantic, and be in an environment that is probably more likely than not going to lead to some type of sexual behavior, and that I'll be okay. My first time experiencing blue balls was during my No Fap February, and it was one of the most painful fucking things in my entire life. And it ultimately ended up ruining my my thing because I had to masturbate. And yeah, so that's huge. Another thing that is very important is do not go on any porn sites. Like, just don't do it. Because I've caught myself doing it so many times, and you're like, oh, you know, maybe I'll just touch it, you know, maybe I'll just play around with it, you know, like, he's kind of lonely, and then, next thing you know, you're once you start doing it, it's just cut. Yeah, it really grabs it. Exactly. Yeah. And so that is one of the biggest, and I've messed up like that before too.
Many times.
And another thing that is so important, I think personally for me, is not, I think one of the things that I actually have found like making me like slip up the most is social media.
Big
because
fact.
social media has so much sexual content in it that like we just normalize. You know, like you're
It's so
pretty much looking
normal.
at titties and ass
All
every
the
day.
time. Yeah.
It's fucking insane, and especially depending on the type of person you are. Like, luckily, I don't follow any IG thoughts.
Yeah.
I really only follow Georgia Smith, and that alone is dangerous. But no, like, I can't imagine being someone who is trying to cut out masturbation and constantly looking at my feed and just seeing booty, titties, booty.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way I'm gonna be able to do it. Like, even Twitter, you know, I don't follow anybody on there, but that has so much sexual content that comes up. So I've noticed that for me, doing the no masturbation in conjunction with no social media is gonna garner probably better results.
Definitely.
I would say.
Yeah, and I think like what you're saying is so much. It's so true, and it's so much bigger than just the pictures. Like, these companies know the type of people that are using these apps.
Yes.
The Instagram colors, for example, are specific colors that make you want to press the app. You know, they stimulate that nice gradient of like red to pink. They stimulate these certain things that make you want to use it, make you feel like some sort of like. Not only that, as we were talking about earlier, the dopamine from likes, from comments, those are things that like leave you in this state of high.
Right.
And now you want to make it higher. You know, you
Right.
want to go do something else that makes you feel even better, and that oftentimes lead to straight masturbation. So I feel like Instagram as a whole, even without, you know, sexual pictures, it gives, I don't know, I can't explain it exactly, but there's something about that app in specific that just makes me horny, you know. and I think like,
colors.
yeah, it could be the
It really
colors.
could be.
It really could be the colors.
You know, these people, like, you know, you're going into data science and you know, done a lot of data science. Like, these people have so much data on you that they literally can like they just know so much about you. Like, and they have like literally psychologists and like special people who work on like, how is it that we can get this person to do this? How is it that we can get this person to do this? And you know, playing on parts of the brain that are focused with sexuality, like I think it just makes people more desire driven, and that is really good for business. You know, that's really good for business.
I've never thought about that. Maybe like sexuality can also be tied into just like that consumer mindset where like if you're in that state of want, it's very hard to delineate like wanting like things and goods and wanting like sex. You know, and I feel like maybe they could actually go together. Because we were talking about this earlier actually, how it could be possible that almost a majority of human acts to some extent are headed towards they're like fueled by want of like I'm not trying to think of affection, but kind of like wanting approval and just
Yes,
like wanting
yes.
you know,
For
affirmation.
Sure. Absolutely.
And a lot of times that could come from women, like a partner, or like a girlfriend, you know, or a boyfriend. And so you can think like, okay, maybe I want to buy these things, maybe I want to accomplish these things, maybe I want to do everything I want to do in my life to some extent is so I can get the most, you know, beautiful woman possible or
Absolutely.
something.
Feel the most validation
Exactly.
as a result of that.
And if that is like the motivation, no matter what you do, to some extent it's fueled by that back mindset that, okay, I'm doing this for a girl, I'm doing this for a guy, you know. And I think like that could actually be another huge reason why everything on social media to some extent is for, you know, whoever you're interested in.
That's super interesting.
Yeah.
No, that's facts. And I think that, you know, I think, you know, just a gigantic topic that this relates to is just pornography, you know, and how, you know, we talked about this a lot recently, is just how fucking terrible pornography is. Like, straight up. Like, that shit is like literal toxic poison. Like,
Yeah.
And I think it's so crazy that, you know, again, I can't necessarily speak for women, but for men, like, you know, we grow up at a young age, you know, being conditioned to... Yes, dude, it's all conditioned. That shit's straight up all fucking conditioned. Like, literally. And to being conditioned to see sex in this way, to imagine that this is how sex happens, and then to build our life around that, to want that, to desire that, and then to pleasure ourselves to that image or that video almost every other day. And how much of our life gets defined by this, like, fucking toxic entity that, like, exists. Like,
Yeah, I was watching this Lisa Ann podcast because I was interested in what she had to say.
Yeah.
And she was talking about how a lot of men email her saying, like, thank you, like, you taught me what sex is. Like, she was talking about how she basically grew an entire generation of men to understanding what sex is. She was talking about porn stars are a lot more powerful than people give them. And I think what you're saying is exactly true. my idea of sex, everything I have ever understood about sex literally comes from movies and porn.
Yes.
Like we're not really those sex classes taught us nothing,
Right.
and we're not taught at all what healthy sex even looks like, should look like. We have literally zero idea about it, you know. And so like the fact that children from 5th grade, 4th grade, whenever people start, that porn is how they learn about this is just like really scary and daunting, because there's not many other resources to turn to be like, okay, what if I want to do this differently? What are the other ways I can, because not only are you being conditioned by it, but the partner that you're also engaging in sexual acts with is also completely conditioned by
Absolutely.
porn. So it's just like, if you're that one, unorthodox person in sex, you're just going to be like an outcast. You're just weird. Like, why are you fucking like
Exactly.
that?
And it's I think you're, saying some fire ass shit, which is just so fast. It's like, we grow up watching this, and we are, society is, don't talk about sex. Sex shouldn't be brought up. It's this taboo thing. Remain abstinent. Don't have sex, right? And then there's just this completely big jump of like pornography in this like world you can enter, right? And if society maybe talked about sex in a really healthy way, and wasn't so taboo about it, it was just more open and more common, maybe we wouldn't have to resort to this dark thing that is pornography to really define how it is that we view sexuality. Because like we were talking about yesterday, it's like so much of how we view reality is based off of things that just aren't real, things that we have been fed images of, and that's how they operate. It's like the example I was giving you is like dinosaurs. Like if you ask anybody, how is it that you ask a first grader, what sound does a dinosaur make? Like roar, like that's the sound that a dinosaur makes. And from evidence that people have obtained, like no, they didn't roar. Their voice boxes were more similar to birds than anything that makes a type of roar. They actually squawked. But why has anybody believed throughout their entire life that dinosaurs roar? Because that is what you've been like given in a movie. That is like what you grew up seeing. Jurassic Park, like that. Like he just came up with that. He's like, I think a roar would just like hit, and then like everyone was like, now it's like if you don't know that dinosaurs roar, you're literally considered dumb. But like that's not actually the case. Like it's actually wrong. And the way you grow up viewing sex and romanticism is this thing that is shot over a 3-day span. That's made to look like that. On average, porn videos are shot over a 3-day span. That's made to look like it happened within 45 minutes. It is this man completely devoid of any of the woman's needs, treating her like a fucking inanimate object, pretty much. And you're not actually like watching romantic love. You're not watching sex. Like you're watching a man use a woman's vagina to please himself and fucking ram that shit back and forth until he is pleased. And the woman is this thing built for like pleasing the man in that video. And that's how you grow up thinking that that's how sex works. That's how you grow up thinking that that's how romanticism works. Because no one else is showing you, right? Maybe if someone else would have showed you before how it worked, you wouldn't think that. And so we all grow up thinking, oh, this is what sex is like. And you're supposed to be an expert on sex before you even have it. You don't even have an opportunity to like explore with your partner for yourselves. What does love look like for you? Like you have to just somehow know what it's like already, just right off the bat. And it's just crazy.
Yeah. And I think what you said is very true in that our exposure to what romance is not really that much either. When you watch movies and it's like, how do you express your love? All forms of expression of love is through sex or through physical touch. And it's like to separate, now I'm coming to the place where like, I can't even separate what the difference between a relationship where you don't have sex and just friends are. I literally cannot tell you the difference. And if you ask most people, what's the difference between having a girlfriend and just your best friend? The answer is sex. But that answer just seems so like simple to me, and that can't be the only difference. Because if that's a difference, then it's insane, Because it's like, how can the only difference between my best friend who's a girl and me having a girlfriend be just having sex?
Yes.
And like it's like, okay, so if I don't have sex with my girlfriend anymore, are we just friends then? Or are we not like still like? So I feel like there are a lot of intricacies in terms of like what love and what those emotions even entail that have to do so much more than just sex.
Absolutely, man. I think, and I think it's so facts. Like I think we grew up thinking that sex is like the most intimate form of expression that there is, and that's the most sacred thing that happens between individuals. And it could or couldn't be, but I think that there are forms of expression that are even more intimate than sex, and it could be something like a really great conversation or whatever. And like you should be able to, personally, what I believe, like be able to have this intimacy with a bunch of people. Like it doesn't just have to be with your sexual partner. Like you should be able to express like deep intimacy like that with everyone around you. But I feel like so many of us grow up to conflate sex with intimacy, you know, and then the sex itself isn't intimate at all, you know, like whatever it is that defines intimacy, I've never seen it in a porno, and if it is in a porno, it's completely fabricated, you know, and it's really crazy, man. And the effects are really insane, and the research is really starting to show, like, you know, we always, you know, research now, you looked at it back in the day about cigarettes, it would have said that, you know, cigarettes are good, you know, doctors would have been giving you cigarettes, whatever. Now it's like, we know, like, no, cigarettes are like fucking terrible. I don't know why anyone ever did this. And the same thing is happening with a lot of things, you know, like coming up, like, you know, like social media, but porn, I think, is one that's really just like the evidence is just there. Like, you know, research has shown that when people view like pornography, and then they're asked to rate their partner, or like, you know, how much they are in love with their partner, say before and after the porno, they rate themselves as less in love with their partner than they were before.
Wow.
Also, they are more critical of their partner's appearance, of their own sexual expressions, of their own beliefs, and they're just way more critical of the person themselves.
Wow.
And are way more less attached to their physical appearance from just from watching a porno. People are way more likely to be aggressive after watching pornos. Like, there are so many things that are insane. Like, for example, with hardcore porn, right? Like, there is something that it's like you're watching porn that's already releasing a certain flood of neurotransmitters, right? But there's something about watching something that's outrageous, like hardcore porn, that releases another flood of excitatory neurotransmitters. And when you mix those two together, that really fucks with you, because one, you're now conditioning yourself to think that, hey, like me, like slapping the fuck out of this woman and like putting my foot on her head is like what I should be doing during sex. Like, this is like okay, and like this is what women want. Because if they didn't want it, why would they be allowing the men to do this? And not only that, it's now like, how is that fucking with your own ability to receive pleasure in your own life, right? Like, when, you know, your brain it builds up resistance to neurotransmitters that release, right? So if you release dopamine too often, your brain is now going to need a higher threshold of dopamine to be released for it to feel the pleasure that it would have normally felt, right? And there's so much dopamine that is released with just watching porn all the time, that type of sexual pleasure, which makes it so that in your everyday life, it takes so much more for you to feel pleasure. It takes so much more for you to feel happy. And now say you even mix that with something like hardcore porn, you know, it's like, unless you're doing something like that, you're not feeling the normal pleasure. And so many men have the issue that when they get in a relationship and they, after the flood of excitement of like, you know, you can now hook up with a new person, they're not even able to like feel arousal from their partner, because
I've heard that a lot.
Exactly, it's so crazy. And it's because, dude, pornography has like literally conditioned you to just constantly look at someone new, constantly have like this new stimulus that is hitting you, and it's like for you now to be okay with being with one person and constantly like getting pleasure out of that.
Wow, completely different. Oh my god, I never thought about that. Like, what would porn be like if you're only allowed to watch one porn star? That'd be nuts.
It would change everything. It would literally change everything.
Jeez, I did not think about that. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, this should just pop in my head. I was talking.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on also when you're talking about hardcore porn. I realized that even I feel like watching it once can really change like just how your brain thinks of sex, because it's like now it's combined those two. You know, like pain to a very high extent in sex. And unless you've ever seen something like that, you would never even like put the two together to that extent, because they be doing some crazy stuff on there.
Oh yeah,
like it's nuts. And I think like porn is a very interesting industry in that it knows what people want, so it will take advantage of that. But at the same time, like they need to have some sort of like responsibility over like what the type of stuff that they're promoting out there does. You know, I feel like right now they have none. As long as it sells, it sells.
Right.
But then you have this whole flood of like stepsister, stepbrother stuff. You have a whole list of this brutal stuff, and it's like some of those things can actually affect people on it. Not even just some, like almost all of them affect a majority of people to a large extent, you know. And I feel like porn needs to have more of a responsibility in a lot of things that happen.
Absolutely.
I also want to say this one other thing when you were talking about research, this actually just popped back in my brain. I was reading this book and it was talking about how Malcolm Gladwell actually, and he was talking about how oftentimes when people make mistakes or errors or, you know, do messed up things, it's not because them as a person itself is the reason that they're bad. A lot of times the way you act and your environment are very closely connected. So they were talking about rape, and they were talking about how people react to certain situations when they're not horny as opposed to when they are horny. And the differences were insane. Like, I was amazed. And it really shows that, like, and this is something I want to come back to, like why I even started thinking about masturbation. It's like, let's say who you are sober, you know, without any drugs, without any exhilaration, just when you are at the calmest and, you know, you are just sober, what you would think then, let's just say that's what your best self wants for you.
Sure.
Right? It then means that when you like switch into this horny mode and all your like your answers and your responses to normal situations are completely different, it really makes you question, are these things that I really want to do? Because if this is something I thought would be good for me, why did I not want to do this exact same thing when I was sober? And that's one thing that scares me all the time, because the thing that scares me about being like horny and just masturbating a lot is kind of like that come down, as if like I'm on Molly. You know, it's like you're with somebody and you're like, oh my god, I like you so much, you're so great, boom boom, great feeling, nut, I feel nothing. And that like huge come down is like something that scares me so much, because I'm like, who the hell was that I was 5 minutes ago when I was like enamored by this person, as opposed to now when I feel nothing for you. And I just don't want to be somebody who's able to do roller coasters like that, because I can mess with somebody to a high extent, you know, and I would never want someone to do that to me too. So it's like what I think about masturbation controlling these urges for me now is like, I want to be as consistent as a person always, you know? So if I really like you and I really enjoy you when I'm sober, then I know that I should also feel that when I am horny, you know, because it's not something that's controlling me, it's me controlling that.
Absolutely. That's fire. Yeah, I really like that. And, you know, to touch on what you were saying about, you know, who are you in that state where you're just, those urges are just flying free, you know? I think that because we have come to attribute those urges with like, let's say as a man, or, you know, you come to attribute it with another man or a woman, and, you know, that also entails some type of romantic or sexual dynamic. I feel like it plays into relationships a huge part as well. And I think that, you know, we were talking about this yesterday, is like, there's a really, really big difference in sex when you like genuinely fuck with the person versus when it's just like you trying to just get some type of sexual pleasure. And I think that so many of us have like come to base our sexual lives off of these like fleeting feelings, that now when the feelings are gone, that must also mean that the romanticism is gone, the love is gone. You know, I no longer have these urges. So many people's love is based off of feelings. So many people's romanticism is based off of feelings. So many of the bases of a lot of people's relationships are based off of that like sexual drive. And, you know, it is that up and down. It's really inconsistent. And I think not masturbating and, you know, not watching pornography, I think one thing it could do is it could put you in a space where you're now not basing like your relationship off of like feelings in that way. You know, it's something more grounding, it's something more solid, it's something that you just kind of come to know in your mind, you know, like, and the sex can just transform in like completely different ways. Like, you can be so turned on by just how much you love your partner, you know. It doesn't have to be any part of their body that you're necessarily attributed to, because I think it's important to recognize that those things aren't going to last, you know. It's
like super facts, like,
they're not going to last, you know. It's like, how, if the only reason you're with your girlfriend is because she had fat titties and a fat ass, you know, like, what do you do when you're 50? Now she has a flabby ass and, you know, flabby titties. And it's like, well, did you actually like her? Or were you just going off those feelings of like, I'm pleasured. Like, where was the thing that actually ended up grounding you, you know? Yeah.
No, and it's scary. It is very scary, because it's like, you touch on a great point where, really thinking about it, to be 100% honest, anybody I've like been close to, dated, it really went like this. Hook up, I got comfortable hooking up, hook up, I am addicted to the hookup, I don't want this to stop, let's start dating. And I can, your personality is manageable. It never was it never was like, I am actually in love with the being that you are, now let's have sex. It was completely like I'm comfortable around you and I don't want this to leave because I'm really lonely and I'm afraid of being alone, so let's just be together. So real. And that doesn't last. And it's like, now I'm understanding, like, oh, like, attraction really is such a like, at least sexual attraction is such a small part of it, that like, that really will come with anybody. You know, if you really find somebody as a beautiful human being, like the way they think, the way they act, the way they move, it's like, you will find them beautiful. You know, it's like all these like external things that society tells you to like value, like, they're cool. Right. You know?
And you know, I think that the whole like not having sex before marriage thing, like, I'm not going to stand here and say it's necessary, but I do think it's like so powerful. And I think this is especially real for like women, like to have a period when you guys first start dating that you guys just don't have sex. You know, people like 3-date rule. Like, dude, when me and Bree, my girlfriend, got together, like, we didn't have sex for a month. Like, and you know, that was really crazy for both of us because we had never done that. And you know, speaking from a guy's perspective, I think this is how most guys operate, which is like, if a girl lets you like hit it quickly, you're kind of like,
yeah,
you know, she's not really the one. You know, she's not really the one. Like, guys don't actually want the girl to like let them have sex with them right away. You know, like you develop way more respect and you get to really view the person as an individual so much more if, you know, you build that in your dating life at the beginning. You know, like, you guys really do take like a long time. And if the guy isn't going to stick around for that because he just wants sex, like, dude, he wasn't the one to begin with, you know?
Yeah.
Like, he legit isn't it. That's a really good way to weed them out. Like, for me, like, with Brie, like, I was really fucking with her. And so I think I suggested, which was crazy. I never thought I'd suggest that. Because she was like, oh, let's take like a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, something like that. And I was like, dude, let's just go a whole month or whatever. Like, let's do it. I'm really down for you. And it got me to like really see her as an individual before I even ever saw her as a sexual being. And that for me was so powerful. And I think a lot of, you know, Christian people or whatever religion that puts sex at the back of your relationship, what that really does that's beneficial is like, it really allows you to see the person as a person, really get to like their qualities for themselves before the sex is ever involved. And if you can do all that and be with them and like really love them, dude, the sex is just a bonus. Like, I think about that all the time with my partner. I'm so like not in the mindset of like having sex all the time that like I'm like, oh my gosh, we can have sex too? Like, this is broken. Like, this is crazy. Like, this is so insane that I get to have this fucking incredible person and we get to have sex too. Like, that's just like, it should be a bonus on top of things. You know, I don't think it should be the thing that dominates the relationship.
That's true. That's a good point. I think one thing I realized when you were talking is talking about how there's this difference between like being a person and being a sexual being. And I think that's very important because I don't know if this is just me or how everyone functions, but like, if you really think about it, literally everyone around you, as long as they're not 12 or 13, every adult around you has at some point had sex. Like, and I think like I forget that a lot of times, you know, it's like you meet people, you're just like, you're a person, but no, like every single person has done some weird shit when they've been fucking. And I think like understanding that and being more comfortable with the fact that we all enjoy sex, we all have sex, should be more normalized. Absolutely. You know, a lot of times, like especially in a lot of different parts of cultures and things, and I can speak from Indian culture, it's like people try to like bring people's sexuality down. Like, you're not a sexual being. And if you are a sexual being, then you're not a person. And I feel like that's where that thing we were talking about earlier comes, because I think that's a problem too. Like, why is it that I can't have sex with you on the first date and still respect you? Because that is a problem I have too. But I want to understand why that's true, because it is definitely true.
It is a problem.
Yeah, it is for sure a problem, because you are still a valuable human being and you can still be a great person. You just may be open with your sexuality and you had sex the first time, which means literally nothing.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think it is a difficulty that a lot of people have. Like, let's say I never normally do that, but you're someone I like so much, and I don't know, and I'm not capable of expressing my affection for you in any other way, so I want to do it the first time, but I've never done it before. In those type of situations, it's like then that same argument that we were using earlier, like, just wouldn't hold still, you know. But in our mind, it would be like, all right, we still hooked up the first time, it doesn't matter. So I think like being able to actually acknowledge that, okay, everyone around me is having sex and like it's okay, and that's just like normal,
absolutely,
is like a huge part of it. Because like I hear people say some of the crazy, and I have said some of the wildest shit when people are like, all right, what if your son said he was having sex when he was 15? Lit, dope. What if your daughter said she was having sex when she was 15? And it's like the fact that there's a different answer there. In that in itself is the issue, because it's like I view your sexuality completely different than how I view his sexuality. And I think like that really just like expands to this thing that's so much bigger, where it's like some people are not allowed to be sexual beings and human beings. It's like you're either one or the other.
Absolutely.
And I think that like that's just dark. It's so dark when you watch like Altered Carbon and stuff, and they like fly up to this place where all you do is have prostitutes that are people and things. That's how we get to a place like that. Right. You know, it's like we view sexuality as such a negative thing. Right. You know, it's like I get to get rid of my worst urges on you, and I'm going to use you as a sexual being. When did it become so dark? Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't make sense.
Well, what did you tell me about prostitution the other day?
What did I tell you?
About the job.
Oh, yes. So I read somewhere that the prostitution was the first job ever. Like, that was why people started, you know, giving money. Like, people started, and that's like nuts to me. And it's like, even when I see people throwing a lot of money at strip clubs and stuff, it bewilders me, because I've never gone to a strip club. I was like, I want to experience everything in the world once, so I do want to try it. But like, it's like, at the same, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like I work all week, I made a lot of money.
You can spend it on sugar.
Yeah, because I didn't, instead of like painting, drawing, singing, whatever I really love, unless you really love work, you went and worked hard to get some money.
Absolutely.
And now I'm just gonna fuck it all up and just literally throw money at this woman for dancing.
Right.
Which like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
And so I was just like trying to understand like what is it about people that just makes us value sex so much. We're like, here, what we gave up our freedom to collect, let's just throw it at this for like this minute of pleasure.
You know what I'm thinking of? So like as you were talking, like I kind of pictured this image in my head, right? So you're talking about like, when you meet a girl and you go on a date with them the first time, the thing that is in your mind is sex, right? That's the thing that's really popping up. And a lot of us, right, if we do have sex on that first date, it's now kind of hard to separate the two. And it kind of got me thinking, right? So sex, a lot of it is running on the same pathways that, say, something like cocaine would run on, right? There's this place called the nucleus accumbens in the brain, which holds all the dopamine stores, and it's pretty much playing on this part of the brain. And I don't think it's too far of a stretch to say that it's similar to a cocaine addiction. Maybe not as extreme, but you still do have a lot of the addiction, right?
Yeah.
And so let me play this out for you. Say you're a cocaine addict, right? And you now meet a person, and they have cocaine, right? They're a cocaine dealer, and you know that, right? And you go to meet them, and you guys are hanging out, you guys are talking, and they just pull out the cocaine and put it on the table. You haven't had any cocaine in I don't know how long. Let's say you haven't had cocaine in a month, and you're feeding for it. You're not even going to focus on what's going on over here. You're going to focus on the cocaine. You're not even thinking about this person as an individual, as a being. You're focusing on how can I get my hit? How can I get my fix of like getting that dopamine? And I think it's the same thing with people. It's like we're so addicted to sex and we're so addicted to pornography and masturbation and feeling good in that way that when we look at this person, we're not thinking about that. We're thinking about how is it that I can please these urges that I have within me? How is it that I can get my hit? How is it that I can get my fix? Because we're all just addicts trying to get that fix. And that is the thing that I feel like when we see people, that is the thing dominating our mind when we're around them. We're thinking about, how can I feel good right now in this moment? How can I get my cocaine fix?
Wow. Yeah, damn. I'm trying to... Because you're not wrong.
I could be.
I mean, like, I think I understand, like, where you're coming from. Because I'm just thinking about the way I, like, interacted with women when I was growing up. From, like, in high school and things like that. It was, like... It never made sense to me. It was, like, they were, like, literally a completely different being. And it was, like... It was just the way that the way I just thought the world will work. It never was, like, we are all literally people.
Yeah.
Like, we're all literally people. Like, we're not different, like, all, like, sexually, like, things that could be a little different, but as a being, like, we're all humans. Yes. And I feel like that understanding didn't come to me until so much later, and I really want to understand why, because I don't want to continue living in a society supporting the things that make people think like that. Absolutely. And I feel like so many issues, whether it's racism, sexism, comes from the fact that, like, I don't see you as a person. I see you as you're either black, I see you as a woman, I see you, I see you as these, like, labels and not, like, as a person itself. And I feel like if you start connecting with people just for the fact that they're people, then it's like all this other stuff just becomes secondary labels. It's like we're still the same being, and then it's all this other stuff that comes after, and I think, like, that is especially true with women. It's like,
yeah, dude, yes. Women really, like, get the shitty end of the, like most things they do, they get the shitty end of the stick for it. Like, women being allowed to masturbate, that's something that society has for a long time, especially depending on what religion you come from. Say you come from Catholicism, it's not okay. Like, it's not viewed as okay. Men, you can go wherever, you can do whatever you want. It's normal. Like, you're talking about the kids, right? But it's like your daughter doing it, like women doing it. It's such a bigger taboo, and it's such a part of, like, not to say that to say that masturbation is something that is purely bad, and I feel like that's something that's also really important to say. It's like, it's very important for you to understand your sexuality, like, especially women, like, they got some complex shit going on down there, and it's very important for you to understand your body, because no one else is going to. And masturbation, like we've been talking about, it is the the abuse of masturbation, but masturbation in itself is nothing negative, it's actually very healthy, right? Very. And especially for women, because it's so many women never grow up exploring their sexuality in that way and exploring how their mechanism works, that they don't know how it works and they can't explain to anybody else. That's why, over 40% of women have, like, never had an orgasm. Like, wow. I think that has, like, such a gigantic part to do with, like, the fact that they never actually get to explore how it is that they get pleasured, what it is that you have to do, and they explain to somebody. And they can never talk about it because it's something that's viewed as so shitty. And then it's like in porn's not like built for them, you know. It's built for men. It's so crazy because I have a lot of homegirls who tell me that they're straight and they watch lesbian porn. And I never understood why. I was like, dude, that's like so weird. Like, okay, so my assumption was like, okay, you're bi or something like that, right? Little did I know how ignorant I was to how unenjoyable it is for a woman to watch
I can imagine.
normal porn.
Oh my god.
You know, like they're literally just
imagine.
watching like just fucking a guy just destroying that. Like it has nothing to do with pleasing the woman.
Oh, no.
But lesbian porn, it's so focused on like actual like pleasure of the person, like the woman. That is how women want to be pleased. You know, that is how they should be pleased.
Sense.
It's focused on their pleasure, and like of course it's gonna be more interesting to watch. You know, it's something with my male dominated mind I could never even understand until like someone really explained that to me. I was like, that's crazy.
Yeah, I can totally understand why. You know, it's a very interesting thing because it is something that each person has their own journey with, you know, because like finding yourself, a huge part of that is finding your sexuality, understanding what it is. One thing I really want to talk about, I think has made the biggest difference for me, and this is something like I've shared with people, but I always feel very vulnerable sharing it with them, is like when I was growing up, 5th, 6th grade, I would literally before I sleep, so I would be, because I like look at my phone or something, I'd be like, damn, that guy's pretty attractive. I would literally before going to sleep, I'd be like, God or whoever's up there, like, please don't let me be gay, and I'd knock out. Like, because that is how afraid I was that I would be gay.
Yeah.
Not understanding that, like, it isn't some, like, 1-0 type of thing. It's, like, you're straight or gay. I think, like, once I understood that, like, my, like, fear of being gay or straight or whatever just, like, went away. It was just, like, I am. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and I think it's very important. And my friend always says this statement as a joke, but I think it's very true. Gay acts don't make a gay person. Right? Like, in theory...
They don't?
In theory, like, you could suck dick and not be gay. Like, you could genuinely do that act just because you're like, I want to see what it feels like. Oh, for sure. Do it and not actually like men.
For sure.
You know, and I think that's like crazy though, because like no one thinks about it like that. It's like if you do something gay, you're just gay.
Oh, for sure.
You know, it's not as if you can pick. Like somebody else can't tell me if I'm gay or straight or whatnot. Sure. Like I'm the only person who can actually like know and also just do whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah.
But the reason I think that's super important is like everything else becomes a lot easier after. You know, like all these other stresses and pressures just completely dissipate off your head because you're like, I don't need to fucking show all my men how straight I am. Like I feel like that like need to be like I want to show my friends how much of a boss I am has so much to do with the way like in addition to porn and things like that, how much of the way we like view other people, you know? And it's like dissipating the need to do that or like prove to yourself that you're straight and just know that you just are a sexual being and you're just gonna figure your way out. Just takes so much of that pleasure, that like, you know, weight off your shoulders.
Absolutely, dude.
So I would say like that figuring out your sexuality from whenever you start puberty until, you know, is a beautiful journey. Absolutely. And I think that it should be, more people should be able to be flourishing in it and not have so many negative experiences, because I know tons of people who've had awful experiences.
Absolutely,
you know?
man. Absolutely. And you know, I think so many more people would realize that their sexuality is very different from what they thought it was, you know. Like I was giving that example of it yesterday. You know, say all men in society were told that, you know, they have to eat mushroom pizza and you know, there's this pepperoni pizza that's around, and you really want pepperoni pizza, but you're just told from the beginning you can't try pepperoni pizza, or else like you can only eat pepperoni pizza for the rest of your life. Like that's all you're ever gonna want, and so you never get a chance to like taste the fucking pizza. Like, does this taste good? Do I enjoy this?
Yeah.
Is this something I want to identify with? You know, like a pepperoni pizza eater. Like you have no clue, and you know you may be eyeing that pepperoni pizza your whole life, but you're never gonna actually taste it. You're never gonna get a chance to do it, because the second you even look at the pepperoni pizza, you're like, hey, were you looking at that pepperoni pizza? Like, nah, man, dude, you know I'm a mushroom guy, bro. I would never do pepperoni pizza.
Perfect example.
You know me, like
because it's funny the way. Perfect.
And it's as like asinine as the fucking example is, you know, because that's really how dumb it is. Like you cannot go and experiment with your sexuality without being called gay. Like, oh yeah, bro, like you said you fucking touched me while we were walking hands. We like held hands together while we touched you, and you didn't say no homo. Like you're literally gay, bro. You have to say no homo so that we know that you're not gay, because that like completely nullifies. Like you can just suck dick, and as long as you say no homo, like you're straight, bro. Like you're fucking good. Like that, it like cuts everything out, bro. Like our roommate the other day, like shout out to Vishu.
Oh, the ice cream.
It was I make smoothies in the morning, and he was like, hey man, do you want to go get some fruit together? Like, do you want to go shopping next time you go get food? We could buy some fruit together. And I was like, I'm down. He's like, yeah, no homo. And I was like, did you just say no homo to buying fruit together? Like, now I like think you're gay because you had to say that. Like I don't know. Like now that's weird to me that you even had to say that. Like that's very strange. You know, like that. I thought that was very strange. But there's something I did want to ask you because I recognize I talked about myself a lot. What has your journey this month been like without masturbating?
I was actually just thinking about that earlier today, and I would say the thing that I'm most happy about is I really feel a lot more confident in myself. And like when I actually like interact with women or like honest mainly women, I feel like very like capable. You know, I don't feel like this like I don't feel weak anymore. I don't know how to explain it. I feel very like in control. You know, and that's something I never felt before because I always felt like I was so like weak to my urges. It's like every time it was like I would look at a woman and be like, oh, sex. But now it's like I'm not saying I'm full control, but I'm much more in control of those desires and urges to where like I'm able to have this conversation completely devoid from any like sexual feelings, you know, and that makes me feel very good about myself because that's the person I want to be. Because half of this planet is woman. If I literally only limit my genuine interactions and intimacy with only half of the population, I'm literally missing out on so much in life, you know? And that is how I spent so much of my years, where I only had male friends because I literally wasn't capable of having platonic relationships with women. Sharing intimacy with women where it isn't sex, you're just as friends. Being able to be intimate with your friends, as you were saying earlier, and just with people is very important. And so like I want to be a person who has a lot of women friends, who have a lot of male friends, and able to sustain those and like put a lot of like just effort and energy into those friendships to maintain them and cultivate them. You know, and I think that's like some that's the person I want to be. So I think for me the biggest change that has happened is with the confidence.
That's fire, dude.
Yeah,
that's so far.
Yeah.
What did you notice was really difficult for you this month in terms of doing it? What were some times where you felt like you were going to break and what happened, or were some times where you felt good and what happened?
So one thing I did notice is like the time that I felt most, you know, desired to masturbate would be when I would fail at something. So I've been studying for Jerry this whole month. Every time I'd end up at a place where I was like, I'm at this impasse, I don't know how to do this, I'm angry, I'm getting everything wrong. I want to feel good in that instant moment. So I was like, all right, boom, I'm masturbating, you know?
Whoa.
And what that kind of made me realize is that like, damn, like I don't have a lot of mechanisms to handle failure and defeat in a positive way. And it's like, if I feel bad, I need to feel good immediately.
So far.
You know?
So real, dude.
Yeah. So I started running recently. I started singing more. And like, there's just a lot of things that you can do that are very quick that can kind of just change your mindset, you know? And I think one important thing that I've noticed is the days where I spend time in the morning, like actually taking care of myself before I start grinding, before I start anything, whether it's reading, sitting outside, meditating, like actually being like, hey, you're alive, feel present, and then go do it. I'm much more okay with failing on those days as opposed to when I just wake up, I'm stressed, I'm like, I woke up too late, I need to start grinding, immediately start working. Those days when I start failing, I'm like, I'm upset, you know, because I'm not okay with myself failing.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that's something I have learned to identify, at least, not fix, but I identify that is a problem that I'm suffering from, where it's like, I want to be able to now fail and still look at it in a positive light. Like, hey, I still have the opportunity to try this, and it's okay, I failed.
Absolutely, dude. That's so real. That's literally so far. And I think something that we both found in relation to masturbating that was actually like really important, I completely forgot this, is working out. Like, huge. It's so fucking important. It's crazy. Like, you need, like, you know, I don't want to get on, you know, this whole spiritual hippy dippy thing, but like there's this energy that like builds up, you know, whether it's endorphins, well, I don't know exactly what the fuck it is, but there's this energy that builds up and it has to be released in some way. A lot of times we release that through masturbation, and honestly I believe it can be released through, you know, any type of creative process as well. But for us, what we found really huge is when we felt that urge, we would work out. And on days when we didn't work out, it was so much harder.
So much harder.
Versus days when we did work out. Because you get that feel good. Like you said, you get those endorphins that can come out and you already feel really good about yourself. And I think that so many of us use pleasure as like a coping mechanism for like failure and just like feeling down. Like we have this idea that every time we feel down, we have to like feel good. You know, again, you know, we don't ever want to sit and just not feeling good. Like we have this culture that's like literally told that dopamine and fucking serotonin and endorphins are things that we should always be feeling. These are states that we should always be in. And no one ever tells you like, hey, sometimes it's okay to just not feel good. Sometimes it's okay to just like feel like shit. And you can just stay in that, you know, like, that's fine. Like And I don't know who started this thing that we should always be feeling good. You know, it's very strange to me.
Very strange.
And how often are you doing things that constantly make you feel good? You're getting dopamine release from seeing someone text you, and like, you know, you have that like conditioning. You're eating like sugar all the fucking time. That's like releasing all these endorphins in your brain. You're being validated socially by all these other things. Like, we're like constantly doing things all the time to like try and feel good. And we're just in this. We pretty much live in a society that has like built us to be conditioned off of these items because it makes people money, and what they condition us with is making us slaves to our addiction and to feeling good.
Wow. Jeez, that's like just... Whew.
Yeah. That shit's nuts. And it's so pervasive in all of our society.
That's why it's scary. Because it's
so
not
terrifying,
it's not like a... It's like in there. Because I do everything to feel good.
Dude, yeah.
Like, my whole day is structured to feel good.
Yeah. And like, you know, that study that I was telling you about, you know, where the rats...
Oh,
yes. You know, if they had a choice between... if they could either have this release, or actually I think an even better experiment to highlight is one where people are sitting in a room and they are told to do nothing for 15 minutes, and pretty much they end up finding this little thing that will shock them. It'll stimulate them, and pretty much people, instead of being able to sit with themselves and just not doing it for 15 minutes, they had no phone, they didn't have anything, they chose to shock themselves instead of just sitting with themselves for 15 minutes. And that is how much we are just like fiending for some kind of stimulation all the fucking time, that we will literally shock ourselves instead of being with ourselves for 15 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
And I think meditation is probably a huge... That's why it's such a difficult thing for people to do, because it's kind of... So I actually wanted to talk about this one thing that I thought was super cool that you said, talking about working out, right? And I realized the days where I worked out, like let's say we're doing Insanity, which is just like the high intensity interval.
Shout out Shanti.
Shanti,
the goat.
The goat. But those days were not the same as the days I had physical contact. So whether we're playing basketball, whether there's like some sort of like, or even the days when I was doing for like a couple months where I was doing jiu-jitsu, like where there's like actual physical contact. That helped me like release those whatever energy much more than when, you know, we just did high, like kind of self-working out.
Yeah.
And what I realized is like, I think touch is a huge part of it. I feel like as humans, like we need to, like, touch is just a great thing, you know, like being in contact with people is amazing. And I feel like it's so interesting because, at least in my example, I don't have a lot of touch in my life that's not sexual touch. And I feel like that is something that I need to cultivate with my friends and things like that, where it's like touch is just very because it's a great thing to feel and know that I'm allowed to be touched just as a homie, you know. And it doesn't have to always be sexual, or it doesn't always have to be like that. Just like, you know, it's just nice, like hugs here and there.
I mean, what were you even telling me about men in India, you know, and how they display?
Yeah, like when I go to India, like, and this is a joke that a lot of people say, a lot of the dudes just hold hands and walk, right? And I feel like that's so weird here, but that'd be so great to have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just like, you're my homie, I actually love you. Like, how do I show that to you? How do I physically show that to you? You know, without it being gay. And I think like that's something that I do want to eventually break out of and start doing more, and just like hugging my friends, like actually, you know, having physical touch with my friends, because then it's like, okay, it's not something that only one person in the entire world can do and no one else can do, you know. And it just, there's just so much, I feel like, just stress built up from all these small little things that masturbation becomes a thing for me to turn to.
Absolutely.
And it's like you slowly mentally release all these like stresses. It's like, oh my god, I'm like a being. I can show love to myself in ways outside of masturbating. I can stretch. I can like give myself a massage. My friends can give me a massage. It doesn't have to be masturbation the only way I can show myself love.
Absolutely, bro.
You know?
Absolutely. And, you know, I think that something that, you know, relates to that is that, you know, those things are intimate, right? And I think something that I've noticed in my own life, and I wonder how many other people struggle with this, is that like we are, you know, fed this proxy, which is like this unconnected, unromantic sex that we're constantly being conditioned to watch, right? And I think, especially with how, you know, most people's parents are divorced, right? Most of the sex you watch is very cold and dismissing of like people's actual needs, that when we like actually have like real intimacy, we're like scared of it. Like, I'm like actually like really terrified of like actual intimacy, like just being able to like literally like look into like someone's eyes when you're talking to them, or like look into your partner's eyes like consistently and just like hug them and like be vulnerable with them in like so many like deep ways. Like we actually like really, honestly, I think a lot of our sex is like so unintimate, and a lot of our day-to-day actions are like so intimate because like I think we actually like really fear intimacy because we're never really told how to do it, and we're never really told how to recognize it, and mostly we're not really ever taught how to accept it. And I think that's really huge in like our day-to-day lives. And I think it makes intimacy with just your homies on a day-to-day basis so much harder, you know, with including guys and girls, like with your parents, you know, with whoever. Like, I think intimacy is truly something that's left out of our culture, and it's just replaced with like sexual pleasure.
Very true. I was actually reading the 4 Agreements, finishing it up. Great book.
So far.
And in the final chapter, they're talking about going to this place where you're a child again. And they're talking about how, and I was thinking about what you were just saying about intimacy, and I'm like, children are intimate as fuck.
Yes.
They like love the fuck out of literally everybody.
Yes.
And it's not that we're afraid. We've gone through things that have made us scared of intimacy.
Yes,
you know, and it's like I don't want to feel anything anymore. I'm just scared of like what will happen when feeling is there. It's just like it opens up this whole world of hurt that if you're like closed off and never feel, you can just block or deflect that from you. You know, and I feel like being able to like understand that, and understanding that a life with like no intimacy or that type of connection just is like it lacks something, you know.
Sure.
And like being able to be vulnerable and being hurt is much better than feeling nothing is an argument I think I would make, you know. And I feel like that doesn't mean like get yourself in the most toxic relationship, obviously. It means like just like being able to like be okay with being intimate, but at the same time like keeping your boundaries and, you know, doing what you need to do. But
Absolutely.
I feel like a lot of people, and me especially, I'm very like closed off to even feeling that type of intimacy. And that is something that I'm going to have to work on and just like come to a better, healthy understanding. And I think that's why this whole like masturbation, I guess the bigger picture what we're talking about is just like sexuality, you know, like kind of like coming to a place where we're like okay with what our sexuality is, and like finding out how we can make it flourish, you know, instead of living in this place where we're these closed off, cold humans, you know.
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, and this is something that keeps coming back to me over and over, we're only alive for so long. So whether it's sex, no matter what it is, I want to be able to do it the best that I can possibly do it, you know. And I think like this is some of the steps that I need to take to get to that.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
I truly think so. And like, I think, you know, building habits and building things around you being the best version of yourself is like what you owe to yourself, you know, like really just being like, love yourself so much that every action in your life is in alignment with that. Every action in your life represents that, you know. And I think something as simple as cutting down a abused behavior, whatever it is, for this topic is masturbation, is something that is so crucial and essential for you to ever really experience self-love, and for so many areas of your life to be improved, whether it's your relationship, whether it's your levels of aggression, whether it's your ability to control your behavior. You know, they say how you do anything is how you do everything. And so I think a lot of us have to look at how the patterns and the habits in our life connect to other areas of our life where maybe we think they don't connect, you know, because I think they can have a way bigger difference than we expect, you know. And yeah, it's just a lot more things are connected than we expect them to. And making a difference in this area can make such a big difference in other areas of your life, and like experimenting with just trying different things, you know?
Yeah. And this is the, you know, first habit that I have like was very difficult for me to accomplish, but I ended up doing, you know. And like that means so much to me because now I'm in a mindset that I can accomplish anything in my life, as we were talking about earlier. But
you're a powerful man.
Yeah, thank you. No, you too. Like honestly, and I wanted to say like it's really beautiful how one person accomplishing something can kind of just like radiate into other people. You know, that like that motivation and inspiration when it comes from someone you know is just so powerful. You know, like I noticed you told me about that and I was like, okay, my friend did that, like I can do that. You know, it's not like some sort of celebrity or somebody who's like, it's like someone I know and I'm close with can accomplish it. I'm like, okay, he's giving me the inspiration that I too can do it. You know, and I feel like it propagates like that. And I think like you started that and you put that idea in my head. So like, thank you so much for also doing that. I do very much appreciate and acknowledge you for that.
Of course, man. And you know, I think what's dope is that you actually did it, you know, and you actually like stuck to your guns, and that's so cool. And the fact that, you know, you now have this group that you're doing it with, and like other people who are like going along with it and like doing it too, it's like it really is a chain reaction, dude. And it's so far, and it's going to be so interesting to see how those individuals are affected by something which I had no clue would even affect them. You know, this is something I was like, oh, I'm just going to do this just to do it. Fucking why not? Little would I ever think that one decision, that one day would now affect these people's lives in this way. And who knows what the effects could be, you know? Maybe they'll have experience more, you know, romanticism in their relationship, you know, maybe more self-esteem. Who who knows what it could
Exactly.
be, and then maybe they'll pass it down to other people. You know, like it's so beautiful. Like it really just takes one person to like plant a seed, and then it can water into like this beautiful, gigantic fucking redwood tree. You know, that you would never expect.
Definitely, and that's why I really wanted to have this conversation. I think more people should. You know, it's like men, we're not. You know, I can't speak for women, but especially for men, it's like we're kind of fed this just unreasonable idea of what sex and love and romanticism should be. And I think learning and getting better and understanding and observing different cultures, seeing what different people are doing, how they go about it, what is the most healthy way we can do through research, through personal experiences, like very important. Absolutely. So like more conversations like this kind of make sex not such a taboo topic, but something that we should be proud of, and like something that I'm very proud that this is like sexuality is part of me. Like I am a sexual being, you know.
And you know, so many of us want to own our victories, but so many of us don't want to own our mistakes, you know? And it's like, own your mistakes, own when you mess up, you know? Like, it's okay. Like, so many people don't want to start the journey because they're afraid to fail. And you've already failed in that moment, you know? They say the only difference between the master and the student is that the master has failed more times than the student has ever even tried.
Wow.
And I think that is something that, I think Yoda said that? I could be true. And I think that it's just so important to just try, man. Just try and just not give up. Like, just believe in yourself and in your ability. And it's like, once you set that standard, it changes the way everyone else thinks, right? So, like, I remember learning about Roger Bannister, who was the first person who ever broke the time record for under 4 minute mile.
Yeah.
And before he did it, literally, like, people genuinely thought you couldn't do it. Like, there was a theory that, like, literally your heart will explode if your body gets, like, put under that much pressure.
Wow.
Like, people just were convinced you cannot do it. And once he did it, if you look at the years following, every single person after him beat that record and beat it even more. Everyone was getting under 4 minute. And now it's common to do under 4 minute mile. You know, was it 5 minute mile? Could be 5 minute. Whatever it was. It's common now. And pretty much all that happened was the person told themselves, oh wow, this person did it, so I can do it. Now they just believed, you know, and that is like the dopest thing about being able to do something and share it with others. Like, that's really the most fire thing. Like, just being able to inspire belief in anybody in any way, you know. And like it's just co-inspiration is like the dopest thing I can think of, honestly.
And this is a great start, and I hope anybody who watches this like knows that like they can do it too, you know. And
you can do it.
You can do it.
Set your mind to it. Own your mistakes. It's okay to fail, and you're way stronger than you think you are.
Facts. Thank you so much,
bro. Hey, you gotta hug it out now, bro. You gotta hug it out now, bro.
Damn.
Get that intimacy.
Thank you, dog. I appreciate that.
Love you, doggy. Beautiful.
That's it for the episode. Hope you guys all liked that. We were just, you know, I want to thank Mylon for being able to share a very vulnerable space. We did talk about a lot of things that normally people don't talk about. So I do want to thank you for feeling okay with sharing all of that. But yeah, hope you guys all enjoyed. Have a great week. I will see you next week.
Stay safe.
That was fire.
Bro, hey, bring that in, bro. I was literally dummy fire, bro. That was flame ignite fucking lava.
That was great.
That was so good. I've never been so in flow.